Hi, I'm Robert Rickover, an Alexander Technique teacher in Omaha, Nebraska. And my guest today is Imogen Ragone, an Alexander Technique in Wilmington, Delaware. And we're going to talk today about concentration as understood by F.M. Alexander. And a lot of this comes from his second book, Constructive Conscious Control, and particularly sections called sensory appreciation in its relation to human needs, incorrect perception, knowing oneself, and projection of orders. And if you don't happen to have a PDF version of this book, you can go to Google Books and get one. So, what I want to do today is I have plans for several little interviews on this topic. And in this one, I just want to explain Alexander's idea of how we came to the point of doing concentration, which he feels, and I think many Alexander teachers would feel, is not a good thing. He's talking about concentrating your attention on one little thing. And he considers that a terrible thing to do. But
Okay.
and, so I just want to read a little quote from him. Um, well, first of all, he said, well, I would say, as Alexander, concentration, as Alexander talks about it, always involves tightening muscles. And he goes on to say, um, the problem is that if you it's so insidious that if you ask a teacher asks a student, um, um, how to do nothing. If you, the teacher, ask a student to do nothing, the student will answer, "I'm trying to do nothing." He actually believes that he has something to do nothing. To such a point can we be led by our belief in concentration. It's
Well, I'll have more to say in future conversations because this is about what FM
this
understood
is
or
FM. So
believed about concentration, and he definitely has a very specific opinion about what it is and what it does.
yeah, and I to just to give him his due,
Hmm.
he's very clear that he's not talking about the term concentration when it talks about paying attention to a lot of things at the same time that you have to do, or for example, an academic might say, a historian might say, my field of concentration is this. That's not a problem. Or a guy sitting um, at a construction site in the cab of a crane that's hauling stuff up to a high rise and back. He doesn't just turn it on and up. He has to know every little thing that's going on. It's a very wide focus.
Hmm.
He's talking about narrowing yourself into one thing.
Yeah.
And as he said, it always involves tightening muscles. And I think it's pretty easy to see that if you see someone who and you just see them at a distance and you think, yeah, that person looks like they're concentrating. It's because of the furrowing of the brow and the general contraction of the body, right? So that's the concentration he is not happy about.
Yes.
Right. So the question he the question he implicitly asks, unfortunately, he doesn't just give the answer directly. You really have to pull stuff together from a lot of places. But he asks, how do we get to this point that we're doing that? And he has a very definite sequence. And the sequence starts, it's two steps and then concentration. The first thing is we have very poor use of ourselves compared to savages and the like. Okay, I know. And that leads to mind wandering, which we've talked about at great length.
Yeah,
And
he doesn't like
that,
mind wandering either.
well, but that leads to concentration. So
Can you explain
I'm going to,
how?
yeah, I'm
Yeah.
going to explain this. So let's start with poor use. And I'll just read you a little section. And I'll just read it, and well, most of us are aware of the marvelous accuracy in the use of the organism manifested by the wild animal or the savage in the various. Just I skip over from them. The civilized creature does not manifest anything like the same standard of accuracy. And we human beings just have very poor use. Modern people, right? He's running in 1923. Modern people have very poor use of themselves compared to savages and wild animals. And
His terms, not ours.
his terms, not ours. And
But I think we know what he means.
yeah,
Yeah.
and the reason why this is the case is because we, living as we do now, are dealing with a lot more complex stuff coming at us. Life is trickier, change is happening faster, stuff like that. And
Yeah.
I don't want to go too deeply into that, but because we're going to cover that in more detail. But that's the basic idea. We're not the standard of use in modern peoples is not great. Okay. And as a result of that, I have to get all my notes together here. As a result of that, we realize that we're not doing things very well. We're frustrated a lot of the time. We try to do something and it just doesn't work. And that, in his view, leads to mind wandering. Our mind goes in all kinds of directions. We're trying to do this job, do this thing we want to do, but we're not successful. It's frustrating. Our mind just goes elsewhere. That's his thesis. And so it's that frustration that leads to mind wandering. And as I said, we did a couple of podcasts on mind wandering. Okay, so the question then, so the situation gets sufficiently bad that experts tell us that we need, it's a recognized thing, mind wandering, and we need to really bring our focus to bear on one thing to get
So
the.
it's like going from one extreme to the other.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
says, hold on, because this is great. If you have an interesting quote. He says, when the shortcoming of mind wandering increased to the extent that it called for a remedy, what was more natural than the educational experts, who are subconsciously directed and controlled and dominated, therefore, by the end gaining principle, attempts to counteract it with basically the idea that we need to fix our attention on one thing and keep it there. Okay, that's the sequence. That's the sequence. So Um, concentration is a quote remedy, unquote, for mind wandering.
Yeah, I can actually hear a teacher like saying, concentrate on that because they can see that you're looking out of the window. Concentrate on your
Yeah,
work. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Mhm.
And that's the sequence. And so that's what's happening. So then the question is, how do we deal with this? How do we get out from under this terrible thing? And there are two ways. Um, this is getting a little bit away from what he says, but one way would be to prevent mind wandering from happening by, for example, using the direction I'm not thinking, which is one that we've been exploring. That would get at it at the step just below concentration,
Mhm.
right? But that's not the one he's that interested in. He's interested in the other one, which is you need to find an expert in use of the self. Okay?
Mhm.
You need to get an out in today's terms, you need to get an Alexander teacher and have lessons, and that'll improve your use and concentration will take care of itself.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. Indirect means.
Indirect. And I don't want to go into any more detail than that, but if there's anything about what we just covered, because this is it for the first interview.
I think any remarks I have are more for future uh, conversations,
Yeah.
um, because they're not to do with what he said.
Well, yeah,
I
okay.
mean, they're more to do with challenging and devil's advocate and what ifs
Yeah,
and yeah.
yeah. All right. So I think we'll end this conversation
Okay.
and move on to the next.